The reflective pools in the central plaza of Nova Lumina were forbidden to Ilara. Like every other public space in the Cephite colony, they were places she could only glimpse from shadowed alleys, never approach. The dark, swirling patterns that covered her skin from neck to ankle marked her as maculata, cursed, impure, unwelcome. "Move along," spotted one. A guard called as she lingered too long near the market perimeter. "You know the rules." Ilara pulled her hood lower and retreated into the maze of narrow passages that formed the outer slums. The patterns on her skin seemed to pulse with shame beneath her worn clothing. 26 cycles of existence, and still the sight of her made mothers pull their children closer and shopkeepers guard their wares more carefully. Her dwelling was barely more than a metal box, scavenged from discarded shipping containers and tucked against the colony's atmospheric barrier. The soft hum of the barrier generators provided her only consistent company. Inside, she coughed violently, the spasms racking her slender frame. The dry, painful hacking had worsened over the past week, but medical facilities were another forbidden zone for her kind. "Just need to last until the supply drop," she whispered to herself, sipping water that tasted of rust. The pattern on her left arm, a particular spiral of deep indigo against her otherwise pale blue skin, seemed to throb with her rising fever. Outside, the colony's 3 moons rose in sequence, casting multiple shadows through the small gap in her ceiling. Ilara watched them while trying to ignore the gnawing hunger in her stomach. Tomorrow, she would risk the waste recycling units again, though the guards had been more vigilant lately. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by distant announcements echoing through the colony's public address system. Something about quarantine protocols and medical advisories. Ilara paid little attention. Colony affairs had never included her. Morning brought new sounds, sirens, raised voices, the distinctive hum of transport ships activating. Through a crack in her dwelling's wall, she watched as residents hurried through the streets with packed bags. Fear etched on their faces. Planetary evacuation. Outbreak spreading faster than. Medics already leaving. The fragments of conversation painted a grim picture. Plague had come to Nova Lumina, and those with means were fleeing. For the outcasts like her, abandoned in the slums, there would be no escape. Days blurred together as the colony emptied. Ilara's fever spiked higher. The patterns on her skin, usually a deep indigo, now seemed almost black against her increasingly pale flesh. Her water ran out. Her strength failed. Even crawling to her door became impossible. In her delirium, she imagined the moons whispering to her. "Your patterns are not a curse," they seemed to say. "They are a gift you do not yet understand." When her dwelling's flimsy door scraped open, Ilara barely registered the sound. A silhouette stood against the harsh exterior light, a figure unlike the angular forms of her own species. Broader shoulders, different proportions. Not Cephite. "Hello." The voice was deep, concerned. "Is anyone alive in here?" Through fever-glazed eyes, Ilara saw a human male kneel beside her. His skin lacked any patterns at all, smooth and tan. His eyes widened as he noticed the intricate markings on her exposed wrist. "I found someone," he called over his shoulder to unseen companions. "She's alive, but barely." As consciousness faded, Ilara felt gentle hands checking her pulse, her temperature, not recoiling from her marked skin, but seeking to understand it. "Stay with me," the human urged. "I'm Dr. Hayes. Julian Hayes. I'm here to help." For the first time in her life, someone touched her patterns without disgust. Dr. Julian Hayes had seen his share of suffering across 3 galaxies, but something about the abandoned slums of Nova Lumina struck him as particularly cruel. While the wealthy Cephites had evacuated at the first sign of the Crimson Plague, they'd left their most vulnerable behind without a second thought. "Her vitals are stabilizing, but she's severely malnourished," Julian reported, adjusting the portable medical scanner hovering over Ilara's frail body. They'd moved her to the emergency medical outpost his team had established in what was once the colony's administrative center. "That's the one with the skin condition." asked Dr. Thomas, the expedition leader, not looking up from his data tablet. The locals warned us about them. The maculata said they're carriers of genetic corruption. Julian frowned, studying the intricate indigo patterns that swirled across Ilara's skin. This isn't a condition. These markings are too symmetrical, too precise, and her blood work shows no signs of genetic degradation. Quite the opposite. Well, whatever it is, focus on the treatable cases first, Thomas instructed. We're already short-staffed since the second evacuation. But Julian couldn't forget the way the locals had spoken about the marked ones, with a mixture of fear and disgust that reminded him too much of humanity's darker history. He'd become a doctor to heal, not to perpetuate prejudice. Later that night, while the rest of the medical team slept, Julian returned to Ilara's bedside. Her fever had broken, and she was conscious, watching him with eyes the color of distant nebulae, deep violet with flecks of silver. "Why are you helping me?" Her voice was barely audible, rough from disuse. Julian poured a cup of water and helped her drink. "Because you're my patient. I am Maculata," she said, as if that explained everything. "I'm not from your world. Where I come from, we've learned that difference isn't something to fear." He gestured to his own skin. "My ancestors were once persecuted for having skin darker than others. It took us centuries to move beyond such thinking." Ilara studied him with cautious curiosity. "The others like you, they left." "Some did. I couldn't." He checked her IV line. "The plague is spreading faster than we anticipated. Those who can be moved are being evacuated to orbital stations, but many are too sick to transport. And I am not worth transporting," she stated matter-of-factly. Julian met her gaze directly. "Everyone is worth saving." Over the next few days, as Ilara regained strength, Julian found himself drawn to her bedside during every break. She spoke little at first, but gradually shared fragments of her life. How she'd survived alone since childhood, scavenging and hiding, taught by other outcasts who had since died. "The patterns appeared when I was 7, she explained one evening, allowing Julian to scan the intricate markings on her arm. "Before that, I was normal. Afterward, I was nothing." "These patterns are extraordinary," Julian murmured, more to himself than to her. "They almost seem to shift when your pulse changes." "They respond to my emotions," Ilara admitted. "It's why we're considered dangerous. We cannot hide what we feel." Julian smiled. "Where I come from, that might be considered a gift." For the first time, Julian saw the patterns on Ilara's exposed skin brighten slightly, shifting from indigo to a deep violet with hints of rose. A change he would later learn signified something between hope and embarrassment. As the Crimson Plague claimed more lives across the colony, Julian found himself looking forward to these quiet moments with Ilara, a strange peace amidst gathering darkness. "Your blood work is unlike anything I've seen," Julian said, studying the holographic display floating above his diagnostic array. The three-dimensional model of Ilara's cellular structure rotated slowly, highlighting anomalies in pulsing gold. "These markers here, they're completely neutralizing the plague pathogen." Ilara sat on the edge of the examination table, her patterns shifting between teal and sapphire. Curiosity mingled with apprehension. 3 weeks of proper nutrition and treatment had transformed her. Though still slender, her face had lost its hollow desperation, and her movements carried new grace. "Is that unusual?" she asked. Julian laughed softly. "Unusual? It's revolutionary. The Crimson Plague has resisted every conventional treatment, yet your body destroys it effortlessly." He gestured to the display. "And look, the cellular changes align perfectly with your skin patterns. They're not cosmetic. They're expressions of your immune response. So I'm not cursed." The simple question carried the weight of a lifetime's rejection. Julian moved closer, his hand hovering near hers, not quite touching, respecting the boundaries she still maintained. "You're exactly the opposite. You're naturally immune, possibly the key to saving everyone still infected." That night, they worked late in the laboratory. Julian teaching Ilara basic medical concepts while she provided insights about her body's reactions. The remaining medical team had been skeptical when Julian proposed bringing a maculata into their sanctum, but desperation overrode prejudice as the death toll mounted. The patterns respond to more than emotions, Ilara explained, demonstrating how she could intensify the coloration through focused thought. The elders, before they exiled me, said our markings were channels between body and spirit, corrupted by impurity. Julian shook his head. Not corruption, evolution. Your species may be developing a new defense mechanism. As they worked side by side, Julian found himself increasingly aware of Ilara's presence, the subtle scent like night-blooming flowers, the musical quality of her voice, the intelligence behind her questions. Somewhere between blood samples and genetic sequencing, his professional interest had blossomed into something more complex.
One evening, as Nova Lumina's 3 moons aligned in a rare conjunction, Julian found Ilara on the medical center's rooftop, her face turned skyward, patterns glowing softly in the moonlight. My mother told me I was born during the last triple alignment, she said without turning. She believed it caused my condition. Julian joined her at the railing. Do you remember her? Only fragments. Her voice. The way she tried to hide me from the elders. Ilara's patterns darkened momentarily. She died protecting me. Without thinking, Julian reached out, his fingers gently tracing the edge of a pattern on her wrist. Ilara stiffened but didn't pull away. I'm sorry, he whispered, both for her loss and his forwardness. No one has ever touched me by choice, she said softly. Her patterns shifted to a color he hadn't seen before, a deep rose with golden undertones. It feels different. Their eyes met, and Julian felt something profound shift between them, a connection transcending their biological differences. Slowly, giving her every chance to retreat, he leaned closer. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle questioning. Their second answered with certainty. When they separated, Ilara's patterns pulsed with brilliant, luminous colors that seemed to contain galaxies. That's new, Julian whispered. Ilara smiled, truly smiled, for perhaps the first time in her adult life. Everything about this is new. The council refuses to approve wide distribution. Dr. Tomas threw the rejection notice onto the lab table, frustration evident in his haggard face. They acknowledge the treatment works, but they're insisting on more ethical review before using medicine derived from her kind. Julian's hands clenched into fists. While they debate ethics, people are dying hourly. We've proven the synthetic antibodies work. The breakthrough had come 3 days earlier. Using Ilara's blood as a template, they'd synthesized a treatment for the Crimson Plague. Initial trials on 30 critically ill patients had shown remarkable results, 28 already in recovery. Politics outrank medicine, even here, Tomas sighed. The returning council members won't publicly associate their survival with a maculata. Later, in their private quarters, a converted storage room where Julian and Ilara had been spending increasingly intimate nights, Julian paced angrily while Ilara sat cross-legged on their shared bed. We could go public, he suggested. Bypass the council entirely. They would discredit you, Ilara replied calmly, though her patterns swirled with indigo concern. Claim you've been corrupted by association with me. Julian knelt before her, taking her hands in his. The casual intimacy of their touch still sometimes startled her, sending ripples of rose gold across her skin. Then we take more direct action. We have the formula. We have the synthesizer. Ilara's patterns flared with sudden understanding. You mean steal our own medicine? Distribute it ourselves? Is it stealing when they have no right to withhold it? Julian's eyes held the intensity that had first drawn her to him, his unflinching commitment to healing, regardless of politics or prejudice. That night, they made love with a new urgency, their bodies communicating what words could not, fear for the future, determination, and a deepening bond that neither had anticipated. Julian traced the patterns that flowed across Ilara's body as they moved together, watching in wonder as they brightened and shifted with her pleasure. Her fingers mapped his comparatively plain skin as if it were equally miraculous. I never imagined this, she whispered afterward, her head resting on his chest. Any of this. Being valued. Being touched. Being loved. Julian kissed her forehead. I crossed galaxies to find you. By morning, their plan was in motion. Using emergency protocols, they redirected the medical synthesizers to mass-produce the cure. Dr. Tomas, despite his initial reluctance, provided access codes and turned a deliberate blind eye. They worked through the day and night, filling thousands of auto-injectors with the life-saving formula. Julian's human colleagues distributed them throughout the colony, prioritizing the sickest, including those in the forgotten slums where Ilara had once struggled alone. When Council security forces finally arrived to stop them, they were too late. The cure was already circulating, already saving lives. The officers found Julian standing protectively before Ilara in the central laboratory. "You'll both be charged with theft of medical resources and unauthorized distribution," the lead officer announced. Julian stood tall. "Charge us with saving your colony, then. The evidence is all around you." As they were led away, Ilara's patterns shimmered with an emotion Julian had never seen before, something between defiance and pride. Whatever came next, they would face it together.
The gathering hall had once been forbidden to Ilara. Now she stood at its center, Julian beside her, facing the full Sci-fi Council, the same leaders who had ordered their detention 3 weeks earlier. Around them, gallery seats rose in concentric rings, filled with colony residents. Many displayed the telltale recovery marks of the Crimson Plague, fading red streaks across otherwise healthy skin. They were alive because of the cure Julian and Ilara had distributed against orders. "The charges of unauthorized medical distribution are dismissed," announced High Counselor Varen, her tone suggesting the words tasted bitter. "Given the results, the Council recognizes your actions saved countless lives." Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. Julian squeezed Ilara's hand supportively, feeling the subtle pulse of her patterns against his palm. However, Varen continued, "There remains the matter of the maculata among us. Our traditions and safety protocols have been proven wrong," interrupted a voice from the gallery. An elder Cephide rose, his age-whitened skin bearing the distinctive recovery marks. "I was dying when they brought me their medicine. I who once advocated exiling all marked ones." He bowed deeply toward Ilara. "We were wrong. The patterns are not corruption. They are evolution." One by one, others stood. Parents whose children had been saved, medical workers who had witnessed the cure's efficacy, even several council members themselves. "The patterns protect," called one voice. "The marked are our future," said another. Ilara's skin blazed with colors Julian had never seen before, brilliant golds and silvers that seemed to capture and enhance the hall's light. She stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "I lived my life believing I was cursed, that my existence was a mistake to be hidden. Now I understand my difference was a gift meant to help us all." She looked around the hall. "There are others like me, hiding in the shadows of every Sci-fi colony. Find them, bring them home." The council chambers erupted in a standing ovation. Julian watched with pride as the woman who had once been forbidden to show her face became the center of a hopeful new beginning. Later, as Nova Lumina's 3 moons rose over the colony, Julian and Ilara stood on the balcony of their new quarters, provided with the council's somewhat reluctant blessing. "The research foundation they're establishing in your name will find others with your genetic markers," Julian said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You've changed everything for your people." Ilara turned in his embrace, her patterns shifting to the deep rose gold that Julian now recognized as her expression of love. "What happens now? Your Earth mission will expect you to return eventually." Julian touched her face gently. "I came to this planet to heal the sick. I never expected to find my heart here." "Is that a yes?" she asked, patterns brightening hopefully. "It's a promise," he replied, sealing it with a kiss. "Some distances can't be measured in light years. I crossed galaxies to find you. I'm not leaving now." As they held each other under the triple moons, Ilara's patterns glowed with a luminescence visible across the colony, a beacon of hope and change. Where once there had been shame, now there was pride. Where there had been rejection, now acceptance. Where there had been solitude, now love. In the shadows of distant alleyways, other marked ones watched the glowing figure on the balcony and, for the first time, dared to step into the light.